Guys, it is estimated 300 million jobs will be displaced over the next 5 years. And men 25 to 50 are most likely to be impacted. But I've got good news. I have good news for you. The UN has our back. The UN is on it. Don't worry about it. The UN has got your back. The UN's going to take good care of you. They're going to cuddle you. They're going to sing you lullabies as you go to sleep at night. In fact, the UN met this past week for the AI for Good Summit. And today we're going to talk about it, okay? We're going to talk about why men are at significant risk from AI displacement. We're going to talk about what that looks like on a global scale. And we're also going to talk about the solutions that the UN has. And feel free to flame me in the comments if you disagree, or feel free to agree. It's all good, baby. If your comment is very good, I might even pin it. I've done it in the past, I'll do it in the future. So at any rate, the UN just held their AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva. Man, they have some great ideas. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about men and why I think men are who are going to be the most vulnerable to AI overtaking. And it's going to be guys like you and me, ages 25 to 50, that are often dominant in tech, finance, automation-prone sectors, middle management, white-collar type of jobs. And, you know, the younger men, 25 to 50, you're going to face a higher barrier for entry-level positions, because entry-level positions are typically the type of positions that can be frankly automated away. You're learning, you're reading, you're pushing buttons, you're figuring out how things work together. AI is really good at that. So a lot of companies right now are looking to outsource that and saying, well, how do we cut back on the new expenses? Plus, you know, look, I don't want to throw you under the bus, guys, but a lot of this age group is fresh out of college and doesn't really know exactly what it's like to work in the real world. You know how it is to work in the educational system, but it's probably not the best mirror for what it's like in the real world. So at any rate, just be aware of that, be prepared for that. And that's not going to be everyone. Just if you're going into college, or if you're one of these younger guys, just realize that that's going to be a barrier to entry. Okay, you're graded on your work in a different way, we'll just say. And listen, the guys in your mid-career, 35 to 50, you're at big risk too, because the way that you've learned how to do things over the last 20 years is going to be completely different, right? You're not going to be able to just offload work to a person. You're going to need to know how to prompt an AI bot to perform tasks for you. So there's a big issue that there. I mean, the reality is that already 14% of workers have been displaced. And again, the rates are higher amongst the younger guys. So at any rate, and by the way, if you're a 50-year-old and you get laid off from your job and you're replaced by a robot, how do you think your wife is going to look at you? How do you think your kids are going to look at you? How do you think your friends are going to look at you? You, as men, we have an innate need for respect, okay? And I think this is something it's maybe not properly talked about, but men and women are different in a lot of different ways. At least I know in my way, the way that I feel love is through respect. I don't like to be disrespected by my wife. I don't like to be disrespected from my kids. Certainly not publicly. In any event, let's keep going. And again, by the way, if you lose your job, are you going to still feel that same respect? If you're having a hard time finding a job, are you going to feel that same respect? And that's going to cause a lot of dissension. We're not at the begin. We're at the beginning of this. Okay. In 2025, AI has already displaced 2.1 million jobs globally, and it has created new ones, about 1.6 million new jobs. Although, again, if you lose your job to a robot, are you going to be able to go out and find that software engineering job? Maybe not. The tech layoffs are some of the largest, disproportionately affecting men in software engineering. We talked about this the other day. Microsoft laid off 10% of their workforce, instead saying we're going to bring in AI. We're going to outsource to India. So if you're a US worker in a software company, I think it's, you know, that's certainly at the chopping block. Tech companies, there was another comment the other day. And by the way, I'll put a link to that video about all those layoffs within Microsoft. But I got a comment about this the other day. Why are companies like accounting companies and legal companies slower to adopt the technology than tech companies? I think a lot of it has to do with compliance, and quite frankly, tech companies like to move fast and break things. So they're gonna be kind of the tip of the spear. And as they figure things out, other accounting companies will pop up, which by the way brings up a lot of opportunity for you to stand out in these different markets. All right, let's keep going. Up to 33% of the US workforce may need to switch occupations by 2030. It's estimated that AI is going to automate 53% of market research, 67% of sales. Wow. And so the sales thing is interesting to me because I still believe, maybe I'm old school, I still believe that people do business with people that they like. So being able to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, and connect is going to be very valuable. The reality, though, is a lot of the old school sales stuff is getting on a phone and calling and dialing, and AI can do that. AI voice is unbelievable. It is so powerful. So that's a role there. AI roles in data security, cybersecurity are going to open up. But get this stat kind of blew me away. 40% of companies, 40% of employers are planning reductions here in the United States. I'll put references to all these news articles in the notes below from the research. So anyway, I think we can all agree that AI is going to be a big deal. It's going to change the way that we work. It's going to change the way that we're looked at by our spouses. And the world is ever changing. Now's the time to start learning, to start upskilling, to find new ways to stand out in the marketplace. Because if you get laid off from a job and you're going to LinkedIn and you can't put something like AI powered or comfortable with prompt engineering, or I use AI for data research, you're going to be fried. In fact, I'll give you a personal example, something that happened today, and we're going to get to the UN here in just a moment. We're going to first talk about global impact, then we're going to talk about UN. But something interesting that happened to me today is in a software company that I'm a marketing consultant for. The CTO sent me over a large chart, and quite frankly, I didn't know how to read it. And I was about to reply back to him, hey, what is this? How can I read this? Blah, blah, blah. But before I did that, you know what I did? I took a screenshot, I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, ChatGPT, I'm a CMO for the SaaS company, and the CTO just sent me over this chart. What is it? And bro, ChatGPT broke it down. So instead of looking stupid in front of the CTO, I'm able to go back with an informed, not just way of reading and interpreting the table, the chart that he sent me, but also able to give me some conclusions like, well, based on this data set, it was able to give me some conclusions or additional questions to ask. So if you're not thinking like that on a daily basis, you're behind. And those are going to be critical skills moving forward, because it saved me time, it saved his time. I'm able to save face. I'm able to come to better results more quickly. This is the way that we should be thinking. If there's, I'm right here, guys. If there's ever something that I don't understand, I'm just asking ChatGPT. I'm asking Grok. I'm taking screenshots. I would much rather do that because it saves everyone time and it makes me look like a genius. You can do it too. It's not that complicated, guys. Okay, so let's look at what's happening on a global scale. Per the UN, guys, because the UN is here to save you. The UN will save you, I promise. The UN has your best interest. They don't care about centralization of power and decision making. They care about you. They care about me. We'll get to that in just a moment. So how are different economies going to be hit? The most advanced and developed economies are going to be hit the hardest. We have more internet infrastructure. We are using more computing. There's more production. There's more money involved. 30% of jobs in North America and Europe are at high displacement risk. 30% of jobs. That's a lot. Are you in the 30%? I guess we're going to find out. I hope you're preparing now. Emerging and middle income economies are at a 20% risk, while the low income developing countries, Africa, parts of Asia, are at an 18% risk. So they're saying if you're in a first world country, your neck is on the chopping block right now. And again, you want to start preparing earlier than later, guys, for all the reasons mentioned before. So the UN, they had the AI for Good Summit in Geneva this past week. And what do they suggest? How are they going to save us? Let's look at what they what they want to do. So the first of which is upskilling, a whole of society effort from early education to lifelong learning. There needs to be an AI skills coalition. STEM, AI need to be included in all forms of education. So this I am 100% on board with. You know, the U.S. Department of Education has done a piss poor job at educating our youth. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but quite frankly, the way that like 30%, 33, 1/3 of kids can't read at their grade level, that's an insane stat. That's an insane stat that we have all these kids that can't read. It's really bad. And don't get me started on finance. I came from an insurance background, and I was asked by, I'll give you an example here. I was an insurance background. I was asked by a client of mine who is a teacher at a high school in South Florida. I was asked to come and speak to them about insurance, credit rating, interest rates, that sort of stuff. And so one of the questions I asked the group when I got in there, I said, how many of you know what a credit rating is? Not one kid rose their hand. Not one kid. They didn't know what a credit rating is. These are seniors. They didn't know what a credit rating is. They didn't know why a credit rating is important. They didn't know how to improve their credit rating. Not one. So I had to explain that. I was called back to do another class, teach another class a few months the next semester. Same thing. Not one kid. So I don't know what kids are going to school to learn, but if you're a senior in high school and you don't know what a credit rating is, you're screwed. You're screwed. I told this story in another video a few days ago. I was talking to my niece. She didn't know what cumulative interest was, and she didn't know what Bitcoin was. So I had to explain to her that cumulative interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And I went through an example of how if you started investing today, $2,000 a year, you'd have $1 million by age 60. If you started investing in 10 years, $2,000 a day, you would have $400,000. And she kind of had a light bulb moment. So at any rate, yes, education needs to be improved dramatically. And you know, I have 2 young kids. I don't assume that they're going to get everything they need from school. We have YouTube, we have reading, we have electives, tutoring if you can afford it. I'm not going to get into this video, but I think AI actually has a very unique opportunity to help upskill and educate our youth. Maybe that's a great idea for a business or a project or a minimum viable product that you can develop. So here's an interesting stat too. 85% of countries lack AI policies. So the UN says, hey, countries, you got to have AI policies. Here in the US, Trump has seen this, thinks it's important. He's implemented David Sachs from the All In podcast, from the PayPal Mafia. He's put David Sachs into a role as the AI czar. And I'll keep bringing you information as obviously as the US government makes calls on AI. But AI is obviously important, and you know, if your country isn't looking at it or coming up with plans, that's a problem. So here's where things get a little sketchy for me. Governance, whole government approach. They want international cooperation, of course. They want to assess AI impacts via disclosure certification, tax incentives for human complementary AI, which is interesting. You know, I don't know exactly how that works, but if you're employing more humans, you get more tax breaks. I'm kind of, I'll have to flesh this out in more thought. Have to look at like how this works. Generally speaking, I don't like paying tax. I'm a business owner. I don't like paying taxes. So, I mean, maybe there's an incentive for hiring humans, but at the end of the day, what's going to really matter is what's going to give you the better result for your clients, your customers. What's going to give the best experience. That's what's going to really pay the bills, guys. So those are the kind of the things that the UN is looking at, but they also have 4 steps to get there. So first is research at-risk groups. Do you think that the UN is going to find these us men 25 to 40 in first world countries at the most at-risk groups? I don't think so. I don't think so. I know we are. I've just went through a bunch of stats here at the top of the hour as to why we are. But I would guess that we are not going to be seen as the most at-risk group at the UN. Call me crazy. Targeted financial aid and retraining efforts. So what does that look like? what does that look like? You know, their basically solution is give us all the money, we'll distribute it, and we'll train people as needed. So I don't love it. I mean, I love the idea of it, but I hate the way that it's going to be executed. That's kind of my stance there. Third, adapt for education for creativity and interpersonal skills. And I think this is probably going to be important. I don't know how you actually educate people in this, because when I go into a school these days, every kid is on a tablet. So I don't necessarily know how you're going to focus on that, because that's just not the way that education is done right now. Maybe it needs to be completely rethought. But I'll tell you what, I want my kids to be able to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, speak cleanly, speak clearly, have proper manners, because that's how your kids are going to stand out. That's how you're going to stand out. If your head is buried in a tablet, that's going to be a problem for you. And then they want to explore UBI trials, universal basic income, which is essentially socialism, unless you guys care to correct me on that. But I hate the idea of universal basic income. I heard Andrew Yang speak on the Joe Rogan podcast about this a couple years ago, and I actually thought that Yang made some really good points. He made me actually rethink it to an extent. We could put a link to that video up here. I think Yang did a good job of kind of breaking down why he felt that UBI might be a solution that's worth exploring. But there's a couple reasons I don't like UBI. It's redistribution of wealth, which is basically like, we're going to take from the rich, we're going to distribute it to the poor people because the rich people are bad, which I don't love. But even getting away from the morality of it, the problem for guys like you and me is, if you wake up and you have your universal basic income to cover your basic needs, what that does is it creates this lack of purpose for men and lack of respect. Because it creates bad incentives. It creates this toxic idea that I don't actually need to work. I don't actually need to provide value because the government's got my basic needs. And this has become kind of a major problem in the United States recently. The Chelsea Handlers of the world and a lot of my fellow millennials out there, fighting for a 4-day work week and just not really understanding that the course of human history has been immense struggle, immense hardship. You work hard to provide for your family. And I don't necessarily know that we need to go back to the 1700s and how difficult life was. I think it's great that we have nice lives now. But I think it's also, I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that I can generate income for my family with AI, with automation, with YouTube. I'm very grateful for that. But there does need to be work involved. And the problem with the universal basic income is it strips that need, it strips purpose away. If you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it basically states that, okay, your bottom need is food, water, shelter, etc. But then as you go higher up the hierarchy of needs, at a certain point, you need to feel that you have some sort of self-worth. And if your self-worth comes from playing Super Mario, it's not gonna get you there. So at any rate, really don't like the idea of UBI. Especially at scale. And then of course, inclusivity. I mean, what would a UN AI for Good Global Summit be without this keyword? You got to have inclusivity. Worker-centric design with unions. Build public digital infrastructure. Okay, I like that. I like open source. I like open web. That's good. Open source AI for South-South collaboration. Address the digital divide. So I'm down with. So a lot of these things I think are good ideas. Quite frankly, I think it's a good start. But there's definitely some holes. And ideas are cheap. It really comes down to the execution. So these are my thoughts. I think this is a really important discussion. The fact that the UN is pouring lots of money into it, lots of folks into it is important. I mean, the fact that as I opened the show here today with, the estimate is 300 million jobs displaced within the next 5 years, huge amounts of the global workforce displaced. I think it's important that these conversations are happening. And quite frankly, I think it's important that you, and me are taking responsibility for this now. We're taking responsibility for now because it's not, in my opinion, the way that I see it, it's not a matter of when my job and my income is displaced. It's not a matter of if, rather, it's a matter of when. It's not a matter of if my financial situation is going to be impacted. It's a matter of when. And by taking steps now, you're able to adjust. And that, I think that that's the right place to be. So at any rate, I hope you enjoyed the video today. You can subscribe for my newsletter at aiupdate.ai. I'm doubling down. I'm going to be automating a lot of the top news stories there. I think you're going to really enjoy that. And if you like this video, I think you're really going to like the video from yesterday. We discussed Grok AI, why it's different from the other programs, some of the pros and cons of that model. We talked about why it's different. We talked about how we can automate. We also talked about some business making, income generating ideas. So I would definitely recommend that you check out that video on Grok. I think it'll really open your eyes to some of the complexities and important facets that are happening there. At any rate, thank you for watching the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.